My name is William, and I'm 32 years old. Looking back, it still feels like a scene from some obscure, forgotten film, the kind where the air itself hums with unspoken tension, waiting for a single word to shatter everything. That word came eventually, but not in the way anyone expected, least of all me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a particularly bleak one, even for late autumn in upstate New York. The sky hung low, a bruised purple gray, mirroring the mood inside Mr. Henderson's cramped, leather-scented law office. Every antique clock on the mahogany-paneled walls seemed to tick louder than usual, counting down to a moment I dreaded. My grandfather, Arthur Sterling, had passed away 6 weeks prior, and today was the day his will would be read. He was a man of quiet habits, a formidable figure in his prime, but in his final years, he had retreated into a world of gardening and classical music, largely unseen by most of the family. The real spectacle, as always, was his sister's granddaughter, my cousin Amelia. She sat across from me, perched on the edge of her seat, a predatory glint in her eyes. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair seemed to shimmer even in the dim office light, and a faint saccharine scent of expensive perfume clung to her like a second skin. We'd always had a strained relationship, a silent, ongoing competition that, frankly, I never asked to be part of. Amelia had always been the darling, the one who could do no wrong, while I was simply William, the quiet one, the one who preferred books to social gatherings. Mr. Henderson, grandfather's longtime lawyer, adjusted his spectacles, his movements precise and slow, almost painfully so. He cleared his throat, a dry rasp that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Amelia caught my eye and smirked, a barely perceptible curve of her lips that spoke volumes. It was a look that said, "You think you have a chance? Please." I just stared back, trying to project an air of calm I didn't feel. My hands clasped tightly in my lap, knuckles white. The air grew thick with unspoken expectations, each relative in the room holding their breath. Mr. Henderson's dry voice finally broke the silence, beginning the legal preamble that washed over me like an indistinct tide. My eyes drifted to the mantelpiece clock, its steady tick-tock mocking the agonizing slowness. I felt a pang of inadequacy, a feeling from years of family gatherings where I faded into the background. Grandfather Arthur never suggested grand expectations for me. I knew I wasn't the favored one. Amelia's soft cough, deliberately placed, drew my attention. She wasn't hiding her smugness, her eyes flicking over me as if I were mere furniture. "Honestly, William," she whispered, her voice a thin, saccharine syrup, "I hope you brought a book. This could take a while, especially if you're waiting for anything substantial." Her words were a needle prick, small but sharp. I simply stared back, giving nothing away, though inside, a knot tightened in my gut. It was our predictable routine. Mr. Henderson continued, listing minor bequests, stamps for Uncle Robert, an antique watch for Aunt Carol. Each felt like a prelude, a warm-up before the real pronouncements. My mind drifted back to grandfather, a fleeting image of his smile, the scent of pipe tobacco from his study. Our relationship was quieter, built more on shared silences in his library than on grand gestures or Amelia's long summer visits. Then, Mr. Henderson's voice shifted, gaining resonance. "And to my granddaughter Amelia Sterling," he declared, "I bequeath my beloved car collection, including the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, as well as the family's summer home in Maine." A collective murmur rippled. Amelia's grin blossomed, pure triumph. She cast a triumphant glance my way, no longer subtle, her message clear. "See? I told you so." My heart sank, a heavy stone in my chest. I braced myself for the expected afterthought. The air in the office, already thick, grew suffocating. "Honestly, William," Amelia purred, her voice dripping with mock concern, "I do hope you're not holding your breath for anything grand. Grandpa Arthur always had a soft spot for, well, for those who truly understood his legacy, didn't he? Not everyone appreciates the finer things. Perhaps," she continued, her eyes raking over my simple clothes, "he left you a lifetime supply of dusty old books? Or maybe, just maybe, a charitable donation in your name to the Quiet People's Appreciation Society. You know, something more your speed. Something that doesn't require ambition or social grace to maintain. She paused, a smirk playing on her lips. Or maybe nothing at all. That's always a classic, isn't it? The grand gesture of omission. My jaw tightened. Every word, a barb. I simply shook my head, refusing her satisfaction. I expect nothing, Amelia, I murmured, voice low. And I require even less. It was a meager shield, my only one. My stomach churned with the familiar bitterness of her relentless need to dominate. Mr. Henderson, oblivious, adjusted his glasses. The legal document rustled as he turned a page. The sound magnified. He cleared his throat, a deep sound, and looked directly at Amelia, with a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The air, already heavy with our unspoken rivalry, thickened further, making each breath feel shallow. In addition to the aforementioned bequest to my granddaughter, Amelia Sterling, Mr. Henderson stated, his voice now carrying an almost ceremonial weight. It was Grandfather Arthur's specific instruction that his controlling shares in Sterling Vineyards, inclusive of the historic estate and all its properties located in Rioja, Spain, currently valued at $4 million US, shall also be conveyed directly into her sole and immediate ownership. The words hung, heavy and impossible. $4 million. A vineyard. In Spain. Amelia gasped. A sharp, delighted sound, her eyes wide with triumphant glee. She spun towards me, a wild, deranged grin splitting her face. "Did you hear that, William?" she shrieked, her voice high with disbelief and absolute victory. "Spain, a vineyard. Oh my God, this is unbelievable. All mine. What do you say, Mr. Quiet life." The room held its breath. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. It was far worse than I had imagined. The shriek of Amelia's triumph clawed at the quiet dignity of the office, grating against the heavy silence that had just moments ago been grandfather's. Her words, "What do you say, Mr. Quiet Life?" echoed, a venomous echo that pierced my already sinking heart. It was a familiar blow, yet it stung with fresh intensity, now amplified by the sheer scale of her perceived victory. My world, already feeling small and insignificant, seemed to shrink further, pressed down by the weight of her glittering $4 million future. I could feel the stares of the other relatives, a mix of pity and thinly veiled curiosity. They were probably wondering if I'd even get grandfather's old gardening gloves, or perhaps a particularly boring antique spoon. My face remained a mask, but inside a quiet storm raged. It wasn't the material wealth I coveted, not truly. It was the crushing feeling of being perpetually overlooked, of confirming everyone's low expectations, amplified by Amelia's relentless, performative joy. Amelia didn't stop. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Oh, William, just imagine. Rioja, the sun, the grapes, the heritage. Perhaps I'll send you a bottle of our first vintage, a little something to brighten your solitary evenings. Though honestly, I doubt your palate is quite developed enough for true Spanish reds. More of a water and toast kind of guy, aren't we?" Her laughter, brittle and sharp, filled the space, bouncing off the leather-bound books and Mr. Henderson's stoic face. "Amelia." Mr. Henderson interjected, his voice surprisingly firm, cutting through her triumphant cackle like a scalpel. He didn't raise his voice, but the sudden command in his tone was enough to quiet her. She pouted, settling back into her seat, though her eyes still danced with uncontained glee. The lawyer adjusted his glasses again, his gaze now sweeping across the room, lingering on each face, then finally settling on me. My heart gave a strange, unexpected lurch. This was it then. The final, negligible mention. "We are not quite finished, Amelia," Mr. Henderson stated, his voice returning to its measured formal cadence. He paused, picking up a separate, smaller envelope from the stack of papers on his desk. It was old, yellowed, and sealed with Grandfather Arthur's distinct wax seal, a family crest of a coiled dragon. My breath hitched. This was something else entirely. It hadn't been part of the main document reading. This was personal. "Grandfather Arthur, in his wisdom and foresight," Mr. Henderson began, his eyes once again finding mine, left specific instructions for this particular addendum, to be read only after all other bequests. It concerns a legacy of a different nature, one he believed you, William, were uniquely positioned to carry forward. Amelia, who had been preening, suddenly stilled, her triumphant smile faltering, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. My mind raced, trying to grasp what this could possibly mean. A legacy of a different nature? The air, which had been thick with Amelia's victory, now hummed with a new, unsettling tension. Mr. Henderson carefully slid a finger under the wax seal, breaking it with a soft crack that reverberated like a gunshot in the silent room. He extracted a single sheet of aged parchment, its edges slightly frayed, and another smaller envelope tucked within. Amelia leaned forward, her earlier confusion now sharpening into an almost visible skepticism. Her eyes darted from the papers to me, then back again, trying to gauge the potential value of this new, unexpected turn. My breath felt caught in my throat, a dry leaf lodged there, as a faint hope, fragile and tentative, flickered to life. The lawyer cleared his throat again, his gaze unwavering as he looked directly at me. "William," he began, his voice taking on a gravity that sent a shiver down my spine. "Your grandfather, Arthur Sterling, in this personal codicil, has bequeathed to you not an object, nor a property in the traditional sense, but a responsibility." Responsibility. The word hung in the air, heavy and undefined, a stark contrast to Amelia's millions. My brow furrowed, a mix of apprehension and curiosity warring within me. "He designated you, Mr." Henderson continued, opening the smaller envelope and extracting a crisp typewritten note, as the sole custodian of his legacy of whispers. This entails the complete and exclusive access to, and the future management of, his private archives, housed within a specific undisclosed location that only you are privy to. This includes all his personal research, his private journals spanning decades, and a collection of artifacts grandfather meticulously gathered throughout his life, each with its own untold story. My mind reeled. Archives, journals, artifacts. It sounded less like an inheritance and more like a scholarly quest. Amelia let out a small, derisive snort from across the table. Though Mr. Henderson ignored her, his attention fixed solely on me, his eyes holding a profound seriousness. I could practically hear Amelia's internal monologue, measuring the absence of zeros in this peculiar bequest. "Furthermore," Mr. Henderson added, his voice regaining its ceremonial weight, "Grandfather Arthur established a perpetual endowment fund, to be managed by you, William, for the explicit purpose of preserving, digitizing, and ultimately sharing this legacy of whispers with the world. He believed this collection held answers, vital insights into forgotten aspects of our family's history, and indeed human history itself. The initial capital for this fund is set at—" He paused, looking at the document, $500,000. Amelia burst out laughing, a harsh, grating sound that shattered the office's solemnity. Her face, a contorted mask of disdainful amusement, was a sight to behold. $500,000 for dusty old books and secrets, William. While I'm sipping Rioja in Spain, you'll be, what, becoming a librarian? A professional whisperer of moldy papers? This is exactly what I expected. Grandpa always did have a soft spot for quiet hobbies that didn't involve anything remotely interesting or profitable. A hot flush crept up my neck, not from embarrassment, but from a strange, unexpected stir of something else entirely. Amelia's laughter echoed in the room, her voice dripping with scorn, but her words, intended to wound, somehow felt hollow. She couldn't see the value in anything that wasn't immediately tangible or lavish. Yet this legacy of whispers, this endowment for forgotten stories resonated with something deep inside me, a chord struck that Amelia could never hear. It was a challenge, certainly, and a profound mystery, yet it felt less like a burden and more like a whispered invitation, a quiet challenge perfectly tailored to the overlooked part of my soul. Amelia's laughter, sharp as broken glass, finally began to fade, leaving an unsettling quiet in its wake. Mr. Henderson, ever the picture of composed professionalism, simply waited, his gaze patiently fixed on me. It was as if he understood, on some level, the chasm that separated my reaction from hers. A strange sense of calm began to settle over me, a quiet resolve hardening where the bitterness had been. Her words, though cruel, merely confirmed her shallow understanding of grandfather and of me. "If you're quite finished, Amelia, Mr. Henderson stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet possessing an undeniable firmness. "I believe William deserves to hear the full extent of his grandfather's wishes without further interruption." He didn't wait for her reply, which was a choked, indignant sniff. "William," he continued, turning his full attention back to me, "your grandfather was a man of immense depth. He held a profound belief that true wealth lies not in accumulation, but in discovery and the preservation of knowledge. He saw in you a quiet curiosity, a meticulous mind, qualities he believed were essential for this particular undertaking." A small, almost imperceptible nod from Mr. Henderson accompanied his words, and I felt a curious warmth spread through my chest. It wasn't pity, nor was it flattery. It was recognition, something I rarely received from anyone outside of grandfather himself. He understood, the lawyer went on, that the value of sterling vineyards, while substantial, was finite. This legacy of whispers, however, he considered a living, breathing entity, one that could grow in significance and impact far beyond mere monetary worth. Amelia scoffed, a soft, dismissive sound that bounced off the polished wood. "A living entity? Please, Mr. Henderson, are we speaking in riddles now? It sounds like some quaint, overly dramatic attempt to make William feel important when he clearly got the short end of the stick. He's going to be rummaging through dusty attics while I'm overseeing a multi-million-dollar empire." She crossed her arms, a look of profound boredom settling on her features. "Honestly, it's a waste of grandfather's money, funding William's little hobby." I met her gaze squarely, a nascent strength blossoming within me. "Perhaps, Amelia," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. "Grandfather knew that some things are worth more than a price tag. And perhaps he knew that some people are capable of seeing that value, while others are content to merely count zeros." The words were quiet, but they landed with surprising force, silencing her for a moment, her eyes widening slightly at my unexpected retort. The room seemed to hold its breath, anticipating her next outburst. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat once more, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Precisely, William. Grandfather entrusted you with a key to a world he built over decades, a world of forgotten stories, unheard voices, and connections that span generations, even continents. He left explicit instructions for you to contact a specific individual, a Professor Elias Thorne at the University of Edinburgh, who holds the final piece of information regarding the exact location of the archives." He produced a small, elegant business card from within the larger envelope. The card felt cool and substantial in my palm, Professor Thorne's name embossed in a classic font, Edinburgh. The idea of traveling, of uncovering a hidden repository of grandfather's life's work, filled me with an unexpected surge of excitement. This wasn't just about money, it was about purpose, about a journey into the unknown depths of a legacy far richer than any material inheritance. Amelia, still fuming silently, clearly didn't grasp the true gravity of this silent, unfolding promise. Amelia's eyes, usually a cold blue, now flashed with a furious, almost deranged light. Her perfectly manicured fingers clenched the armrests of her chair, white at the knuckles. "Count zeros?" she hissed, her voice low and dangerous, barely above a whisper. "You think your dusty imaginary legacy is worth more than a multi-million-dollar estate in Spain? You've always been delusional, William, always hiding in your little world of make-believe because you couldn't stand the truth of your own mediocrity. This is just grandfather's final misguided attempt to give you something, anything, so you don't feel completely abandoned." A strange, quiet strength solidified within me. Her words, once so potent, now simply bounced off this new, unexpected shield. I no longer felt the familiar sting. "It seems, Amelia," I replied, my voice calm, almost detached, "that grandfather understood me far better than you ever have. And perhaps, He understood true value in a way that remains elusive to some. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic tick of the antique clock on the mantelpiece, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Amelia's eyes. Mr. Henderson, seemingly unfazed by the simmering tension, gently placed Professor Thorne's card on the desk in front of me. "William," he said, his voice cutting through Amelia's silent fury, "Grandfather stipulated that you are to reach out to Professor Thorne at your earliest convenience. He holds certain keys, not just to the physical location of the archives, but to understanding the scope and significance of what you are about to inherit. He is expecting your call." He offered a small, knowing smile that spoke volumes of shared secrets with Grandfather. Amelia pushed back from her chair with a sharp scrape, startling everyone. "This is ridiculous," she declared, her voice rising in pitch, losing its earlier controlled venom. "Absolutely, utterly ridiculous. I'm leaving. I have a vineyard to oversee, and clearly, some people prefer to sift through antique garbage instead of living a real life." She stalked towards the door, her expensive perfume leaving a faint, cloying scent in her furious wake. "Amelia," Mr. Henderson called out, his voice firm. "There are still final documents to sign." She paused, her back to us, her shoulders rigid. "Send them to my agent." She spat without turning, her voice dripping with disdain, along with a bill for my wasted time. "And William," she added, finally turning her head slightly, her gaze piercing, "don't come crying to me when your whispers turn out to be nothing but dust and disappointment. Enjoy your $500,000 hobby. I'll be in Rioja." With that, she exited, slamming the door shut with a resounding thud that echoed through the quiet office. The sudden absence of her volatile presence left a void, but also a sense of liberation. The air, which had been thick with our rivalry, seemed to clear, allowing me to breathe deeply for the first time since she arrived. Mr. Henderson sighed, a long, weary sound, then looked at me. "She's always been rather spirited," he murmured, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "But Grandfather knew what he was doing, William. He had a profound belief in your quiet strength, your intellectual curiosity." I picked up the business card, my fingers tracing the embossed letters of Professor Thorne's name. Edinburgh. The word itself felt like a breath of crisp foreign air, a sense of purpose, not of duty or obligation, but of genuine burning curiosity ignited within me. This wasn't just about Grandfather's legacy, it was about my path, one that felt profoundly, thrillingly right. Amelia might have the vineyards and the cars, but I had something far more precious. A secret world waiting to be uncovered, a journey into the quiet heart of history, and a chance to truly understand the man my grandfather was. The heavy thud of the door reverberated, but the echo wasn't of Amelia's anger. It was of freedom. The air, so recently thick with her venomous perfume and sharp words, now seemed to thin, making it easier to breathe. A subtle shift, like a silent, invisible weight being lifted from my shoulders, transformed the oppressive atmosphere into something almost expectant. Mr. Henderson, who had watched her exit with the same calm neutrality he'd displayed throughout her outbursts, finally turned his full attention back to me. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. It was a smile that held understanding, a quiet recognition of the storm that had just passed and the calm that remained. "She always did have a flair for the dramatic, didn't she?" Mr. Henderson remarked, his voice soft, almost conversational, a stark contrast to the formality of the will reading. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking faintly under his weight, and for the first time, he seemed less like a legal automaton and more like an old friend of Grandfather Arthur. "Your grandfather often said she reminded him of a particularly volatile summer storm, all flash and fury, but ultimately it always passed." A wry chuckle escaped him, a sound I rarely heard. I felt a genuine smile tug at the corners of my own mouth. "He said that about a lot of things, didn't he?" I responded, thinking of Grandfather's analogies for stubborn garden weeds or malfunctioning antique clocks. The tension that had coiled in my gut for weeks, fueled by anxiety over the will and Amelia's predictable cruelty, began to unwind, replaced by a strange lightness. It was a relief so profound it bordered on euphoria, a sense of having finally shed an old, ill-fitting skin. Indeed he did, Mr. Henderson agreed, his eyes twinkling. He then gestured towards the business card on the desk. Professor Thorne. Grandfather was quite specific about him. He said Professor Thorne would be instrumental in guiding you, William. He has been aware of the legacy of Whispers for years, almost a silent partner in its preservation. The lawyer picked up a pen, twirling it idly between his fingers. He's a historian, specializing in forgotten lineages and oral traditions. A rather eccentric man, but brilliant. So, Grandfather confided in him about all of this? I asked, my voice laced with a newfound curiosity. The idea that this wasn't some sudden last-minute whim, but a long-planned endeavor, added layers of depth to Grandfather's actions. It felt less like a simple bequest and more like a carefully orchestrated passing of a torch, designed with me in mind. My mind buzzed with questions about the archives, the artifacts, and the very nature of these whispers. Yes, for many years, Mr. Henderson confirmed, nodding slowly. They shared a particular passion for unlocking secrets, for unearthing stories that time had buried. Grandfather believed that history, true history, isn't just in grand events, but in the quiet, often overlooked narratives. He knew Amelia would never understand that. She seeks the obvious. You, William, seek the hidden. His words carried a quiet weight, a validation that resonated deeply within me. And the endowment? I questioned, picking up the small card. $500,000 just for this research. It felt surreal, a fortune devoted not to lavish living, but to knowledge. Amelia's scornful laughter still lingered faintly in my memory, but now it sounded distant, irrelevant. The sum, once mocked, now felt like a serious investment in a venture Grandfather held sacred. Mr. Henderson placed his pen down with a soft click. It's more than research, William. It's preservation. It's sharing. Grandfather envisioned a global platform for these stories. He wanted them to breathe again, to inspire, to inform. He considered it his most important work, far more valuable than any vineyard. He knew that true legacy isn't inherited by accident, but earned through dedication and a discerning eye. And he chose you, William, because he saw those qualities in abundance. A warmth spread through my chest, a feeling of being truly seen, truly understood, in a way I rarely was. It wasn't about the money or the public validation, but about Grandfather's profound trust, his belief in my inherent nature. Amelia had sought to diminish me with her words, but Mr. Henderson's quiet affirmation, Grandfather's foresight, had done the opposite. This was a path laid out for me, not by obligation, but by an intuitive connection. It was a silent invitation, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I would accept. The silence that settled in the office after Amelia's dramatic exit wasn't empty. It was filled with the soft rustle of Mr. Henderson turning a page, the steady, rhythmic tick of the mantelpiece clock, and the profound quiet of a world suddenly realigned. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a stark contrast to the cacophony of ambition and disdain that had just departed. My gaze drifted to the window, where the bruised sky of upstate New York seemed to soften, a faint, almost imperceptible hint of a lighter shade breaking through the gray. "It's curious, isn't it?" I murmured, my voice softer than I intended, almost a whisper echoing the legacy Grandfather had left me. I looked back at Mr. Henderson, who was now meticulously organizing his papers. How someone can be so blind to everything but the tangible. Amelia truly believes Grandfather made a mistake, that I've been handed a burden, not a gift. A wry smile touched my lips, a feeling of deep understanding replacing the earlier sting of her words. Mr. Henderson leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. Blindness is often a choice, William. Your grandfather understood that. He also understood that true vision is often found in the quiet places, in the spaces between the lines that others overlook. His eyes held a gentle warmth, a rare glimpse into the man beneath the lawyer's facade. He told me once that the greatest treasures aren't found in vaults, but in the echoes of forgotten lives. He really did plan all of this for so long, didn't he? I asked, picking up Professor Thorne's card again, its cool surface comforting against my thumb. The thought that this wasn't a spontaneous decision, but a meticulously crafted design spanning years, filled me with an even deeper reverence for grandfather. It felt less like a bequest and more like a testament, a carefully passed baton in a silent relay. "Every detail, William," Mr. Henderson confirmed, a faint smile playing on his lips. He spent decades assembling the legacy of Whispers. It wasn't just a collection, it was his life's work, a profound personal journey. He often said you were the only one who truly understood his fascination with the untold, the unseen. His words were a balm, soothing the lingering insecurities that Amelia had stoked for years. A profound sense of gratitude washed over me, deeper than any material gain could inspire. It wasn't about the $500,000, though that certainly ensured the project's viability. It was about the trust, the recognition, the quiet nod from a man who saw past my reserved exterior to the curiosity that burned within. "I still don't quite grasp the full scope," I admitted, looking at the intricate family crest on the wax seal grandfather had used. "You will, William," Mr. Henderson assured me, his voice resonant with conviction. "Professor Thorne will provide the context, the first set of keys. But the true understanding, the living essence of this legacy, that will come from your own journey, your own meticulous unraveling of the threads grandfather left behind." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "This isn't just a project. It's an invitation to a deeper conversation with history and with your grandfather." The office, once a place of tension and revelation, now felt like a threshold. The setting sun, finally breaking through the clouds, cast a long, golden shaft of light across the mahogany desk, illuminating the business card in my hand as if it were a beacon. Amelia's world was one of sun-drenched vineyards and material prestige, a loud, glittering world. Mine, I realized, was about to become one of shadows and whispers, of dusty archives and forgotten truths, a world far richer in meaning than any monetary sum. The golden light from the setting sun deepened, painting the polished mahogany of Mr. Henderson's desk in hues of old amber, and the business card in my hand seemed to pulse with a quiet energy. Amelia's world, a world of sun-drenched vineyards and material prestige, felt impossibly distant, a glittering mirage fading into the background. My gaze remained fixed on Professor Thorne's name, a silent promise of dusty archives and forgotten truths, a path that now, more than ever, felt like the only one I was ever meant to walk. It wasn't about the absence of millions, but the presence of meaning, a difference so profound it felt like two separate realities coexisting in the same space. The office, once a stage for cutting words and inherited bitterness, now hummed with a different kind of silence. It was no longer the strained quiet of anticipation or the sharp void left by Amelia's departure. Instead, it was a silence rich with possibility, an expansive stillness that cradled the weight of grandfather's trust. I could almost hear his voice, a low rumble from his armchair, reminding me that true treasures often lie hidden, waiting for patient hands to unearth them. Mr. Henderson simply watched me, a knowing kindness in his eyes, as if he too could perceive the unfolding landscape of my future. I ran a thumb over the embossed lettering on the card, the texture surprisingly grounding. It wasn't a map to a hidden vault of gold, but a key to a world of knowledge, of human experience preserved in whispers. Amelia's earlier mockery, her relentless need to diminish, now felt like a distant, hollow echo. She saw only the surface, the quantifiable, the immediate gratification. She would never understand the profound satisfaction of uncovering a forgotten narrative, of piecing together the fragments of a life long past, each discovery a quiet triumph. "He truly understood," I finally murmured, my voice barely above a whisper, acknowledging Grandfather Arthur's incredible insight. Mr. Henderson nodded slowly, a small, sad smile on his lips. "He knew you would see beyond the obvious, William. He knew you would value the invisible threads that connect us all through time." His words settled over me like a comforting blanket, affirming the quiet conviction that had begun to bloom within. This wasn't a consolation prize. It was a curated destiny, a sacred charge bestowed by a man who saw me clearer than anyone else. The air in the room, no longer heavy with rivalry, now carried the faint, reassuring scent of old paper and the lingering wisdom of generations. The tick-tock of the mantelpiece clock, once a source of agonizing slowness, now felt like a gentle rhythm, marking the steady, purposeful passage into a future I had never dared to imagine. I thought of the vineyard in Spain, sun-drenched and vibrant, a testament to outward success. But my vineyard, I realized, would be planted in the rich soil of human stories, its yield far more precious than any vintage. I finally looked up at Mr. Henderson, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I said, the words imbued with a gratitude that transcended mere formality. "Thank you for everything, and please, thank Grandfather, wherever he is, for trusting me." It felt like a conversation across dimensions, a silent promise made to a man whose legacy wasn't just in what he left behind, but in the unique vision he imparted. The final rays of the sun faded beyond the window, plunging the office into a soft twilight, yet the business card in my hand seemed to glow with an inner light. The weight of it, once just a card, now felt like the weight of 1,000 untold stories, each waiting for my careful hand to bring it back into the light. The journey ahead was unknown, vast, and undoubtedly challenging, but it was mine. The silence deepened, stretching out, an inviting expanse. It was the quiet before a grand adventure, the peaceful hush that descends when a purpose, long obscured, finally reveals itself. The hum of the street outside, the distant city sounds, all faded, leaving only the soft tick of the clock, a heartbeat in the quiet room. In that fading light, a singular image solidified in my mind. Grandfather Arthur, not in his final frailty, but as I remembered him from long ago, bent over a forgotten tome in his library, a knowing smile playing on his lips, surrounded by the silent company of the past. He was there, not in the room, but in the very core of this inheritance, a guiding presence. My own presence in the office began to fade, the physical space becoming less important than the burgeoning world within me. The scent of leather, the cool air, the distinct scent of Mr. Henderson's pipe tobacco from years past, all dissolving into the quiet certainty of what lay ahead. And then, a whisper, not heard with my ears, but felt in my soul. True value isn't found in what glitters loudest, but in the echoes of what endures, patiently waiting for the quiet heart to listen.